Hello everybody, welcome back to the Dragon's Library. Today we're discussing a new book that I've read, Six Crimson Cranes, the first in a duology by Elizabeth Lim. The other book in the series, The Dragon's Promise, has recently come out this year and I wanted to review it, so I'm going to go and review the first book first. Now, this series is apparently also a spin-off of Elizabeth Lim's other series, The Blood of Stars, which I have not read. However, this series has definitely made me want to go read them because Elizabeth Lim is apparently a really freaking good writer. And I am very impressed with her subversion of tropes in Six Crimson Cranes. So, before we get into that, let's go over the plot. Shioriyama is the only princess of Kyoto, and she has a secret. Forbidden magic runs in her veins. A mistake during her betrothal ceremony gone wrong reveals her magic to Reikama, Shiori's stepmother, who possesses dark magic of her own. With this magic, she curses Shiori, banishing her from the palace and hiding her identity, while simultaneously turning her six brothers into six crimson cranes. As one final piece of the puzzle, she is cursed to never speak again, for every word she speaks is an omen of death, and if she should try to tell anyone of what has happened, for every word she utters, one of her brothers shall die. As she struggles to survive, she uncovers a greater conspiracy involving enchanters, demons, ancient religious cults, and a great civil war that threatens to usurp her father's throne. So yeah, Six Crimson Cranes is a fairly basic story of, princess, evil stepmother, magic. You got all the good folklore tropes here. And I liked it. I liked it a lot. I think it does a good job of both presenting these tropes as sort of like normal storytelling tropes, while also subverting them in a way the audience doesn't immediately see coming, and the characters themselves are genre savvy enough, I guess you could say, in order to actively discuss it. One of the things I enjoyed about the story in particular was Shiori as a character. She starts out sympathetic, turns unlikable as you're given perspective on her actions, and she is given very perspective on her actions, and then turns likable again as she becomes competent and smart enough to survive. Honestly, just the general respect I have for her, not saying a single word or crying out in pain because of the curse, is really interesting. In addition, I find that Reikama was a good antagonist for this, and the other villains they used were also rather fascinating, although most of the other villains in this, like the Civil War and the enchanter called the Wolf, are not overtly used. Reikama would be the main antagonist of sorts in this. I'm not going to spoil too much because there's actually a lot behind Reikama as a character. We are even getting a book based on her, I guess you could call it her backstory, that we get explained to us near the end. And that's going to be its whole book onto itself, so I'm not going to spoil that too much. It was actually a very interesting reveal. And the final part with Shiori and Reikama, which I'm trying really, really hard not to spoil, was most likely the best part of the whole book. Now, I've said this subverts a lot of fairy tale tropes, and I'm not going to talk about how it does that, because I think how it actually is executed in the book is really good, and I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I'll probably have it in the spoiler section for anyone who wants to hear about that. But moving on from there, let's talk about Shiori's brothers, I guess, because they are a different part of this. And I will say they are one of the weaker segments of this. There are essentially six brothers. Two of them are kind of forgettable. There are the two twin brothers, who are sort of the pranksters. There's the serious older brother, and then there's the middle brother, who's also the kind and understanding one. And they don't really have a lot of distinct personality traits beside those traits. Shiori name drops them all and is very close to them as family members, but they're not in the book a whole lot. They're often off doing their own thing and trying to get help while Shiori has to deal with the human beings because, she's the human one. And it works. I will definitely say that. I will say for a book that's called Six Crimson Cranes, the cranes are kind of less of a focus for a lot of it, which is interesting. Now, in addition to that, there are some other characters, including the betrothed noble Shiori was supposed to get arranged to at the beginning of the book, and they do play that off pretty well. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but it does play a big part of the second two-thirds of the book. After Shiori meets back up with her brothers, and there's a whole incident, I'm not going to get into it too much, but That's all executed very well, I think. I liked how she met him and the confusion that came from him using his cousin's name, because it feels like they're kind of doing the one she's engaged to isn't the right one, but his cousin, if only he was engaged, she was engaged to the nicer cousin. And they kind of flip it. It's like, psych, he was using his cousin's name. He just didn't want the attention. Oh, okay. No, I just like that. It's very self-aware about a lot of the subtle tropes of storytelling. And I find stuff like that pretty interesting. I can't really say much more about this book, because the whole thing with a book that subverts your expectations is when you're doing a spoiler-free review, you can't really tell people how it subverts your expectations without, giving away the game. I will say that Elizabeth Lim is a fairly good writer. She has clearly done a lot of work on her fantasy world. I have not read the other two books this is a spin-off series of. I want to. I'm not sure how they've passed me up. Probably because the descriptions are the kind of things... I looked them up and it's like weaving the best gowns and it's like out of magic starstroke stuff. And I'm like, okay, I can see how that definitely passed me up. But now that I've read this world, I'm like, I want more of this world. So she hooked me in with a dragon and now she's going to reel me into the rest of her series. Good job, Elizabeth Lim. Use dragons appropriately. No, seriously, I'm not even joking. For all storytellers, the best way to get my attention is to have at least one of your books be about dragons. If you could hook me with one dragon thing, you got me for all of your other stuff. Just listen to Rachel Aaron. She hooked me with a dragon series, and now she's got her old Western frontier magic stuff going on. Anyway, I guess we should move into the conclusion now. In conclusion, I think that Six Crimson Cranes is a very good work of young adult fiction. It leverages the tropes it has available to itself to create some very emotional storytelling beats. That's probably the best thing it does too, is it doesn't just subvert the tropes to subvert the tropes. Because a well-written subversion is all well and good, but a well-written subversion that's actually good storytelling is another thing entirely. And that final scene with Reikama and Shiori was one of the best things I've read in some young adult fantasy in a long time. I live for small scenes like that. Those small tragic scenes are they hit me like right in the feels. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a 9 out of 10. It is an excellent book. I feel like it could have been better in the pacing department to an extent. There are moments where it just jumps around randomly that feel a bit abrupt, and I feel like they could have used a bit more time fleshing it out. But it's clear they wanted this to be a fairly short read, and I can respect that for keeping the length down. So, not everyone has to be The Hobbit, you don't have to have every single part of the journey mapped out with excruciating detail. So, yeah, 9 out of 10, definitely recommend it for those who are into Eastern fantasy style stories. So, yeah. Moving on from there, we have the spoiler section. Oh boy. So for the spoiler section, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so I wasn't originally going to do a spoiler section, but after recording, I was just like, no, I have to. I have so much to talk about this book. I know I don't have time. I'm going to hate myself when I'm doing this, but hey. I'll probably just put a single picture for the spoiler talk section. Sorry. Anyway, let's get started on this. So basically, you start out with Shiori, and she has her 6 brothers, and she has this patrol contract. She animated a paper crane, who is now like her best friend. One of her brothers sees it, and Shiori ends up falling into the lake, where she is rescued by a dragon. She's then punished for essentially running out under her betrothal contract, which, looks pretty bad. It looks like she got to the door, opened it, and then immediately ran away. Yeah, she was trying to track down Kiki, her paper crane that she brought to life. But to everyone else, it looked like she just ran away from the man she was supposed to be betrothed to. And we learn a bit more about that later, and I'll get into that a bit later in the spoiler talk. But yeah, it's a bad look. So Reikama and her father are like, you're getting punished. You're grounded, essentially. You're going to be weaving with Reikama. And Reikama is her stepmother. And Shiori thinks Reikama hates her. Because, the stepmother has to be evil and has to dislike the princess. And during the festival, which she's begrudgingly allowed to attend, but just barely, she gets there late, she runs into a human, because nobody believes her about the dragon. And she runs into this kid with this green hair, and she's like, you're the dragon, aren't you? It's like, bingo, you took you long enough to figure it out. Yeah, you got magic, so I'm going to teach you some stuff. The dragon is actually a lot of fun. is just a riot. I love him all the time. He's this nice mixture of relaxed and casual, but also I am the grandson of the Dragon King, you will treat me with respect, human. I kind of like the pseudo-arrogant, but kind of head over heels for human dragons. They're a very interesting combination of arrogance and I would probably jump on a cliff if you asked me to. But anyway, let's get in here because we don't have much time. Basically what happens is Shiori starts mastering her magic, and she ends up learning from Shiyu that Reikama also has magic. So she goes to spy on her. It's like, where are you getting your power from? It's like, well, she has a lot of power. Not really sure where she's getting it from, though. It can't be the snakes, because she has like a garden of poisonous snakes that Shiori had a bad experience with as a kid. She's terrified of snakes, which can relate. And Shiori goes in there to spy on her in her gardens and ends up seeing that she has a dragon pearl and has like a serpentine appearance. So Shiori's like, holy shit, Reikama's a demon and she's my stepmother, but she's the Emperor's consort right now. I've got to warn everyone. So she goes to warn everyone, but Reikama barges in because she heard someone, spying on her and running out of her gardens, and she basically curses the brothers to turn them into 6 crimson cranes. Places a bowl on Shiori's head and says, you will not be able to remove this, nobody will recognize you, and if you say a word, for every word you speak, one of your brothers will die. And this is where the plot twist comes in, because I'm going to let you know something. And first up, this is a spoiler talk. If you are listening to this part of the video, I don't know what to tell you. You should not be here unless you have read the book. Because this is a massive spoiler. I need to make it very clear. This redefines how you view this book. So, when Shiori wakes up, she's alone in the middle of nowhere. She doesn't wear a lot of jewelry because she's kind of the tomboy princess, and she doesn't know where she is, but she sees 6 birds flying overhead. She thinks it's her brothers flying away, now turned into animals. And she calls out to them 6 words, and they all drop down dead. And then a serpent crawls out when she goes to examine their corpse. She finds they're not cranes, and a snake comes out, and she's like, this is a warning. If you speak another word, one of them will die for every word spoken. And it's, at first, when you first read it, you think Reikama's just making sure she's playing serious. But as you keep reading, and the characters themselves talk about the curse, you and them come to a certain realization. What is Reikama trying to do here? I mean, she sent them away from the castle. She made their father won't recognize them. She had the father on some kind of spell to keep him from, searching for him too badly. And there's some kind of civil war going on. But if she just wanted the kids out of the way, and she already dealt with, she would just kill them. Why make this big game of it? Why send the birds away, make sure they're not in the palace? Why send Shiori to this backwater island, place a bowl over her head, and make sure nobody can recognize her? What is she trying to do? And it turns out, she's trying to protect them. So, Reikama eventually reveals that she doesn't have complete control over her magic. The pearl was something her sister was born with, and she wanted to protect them. And the spell that came out was what turned the brothers into cranes. And it's also what's made Shiori unable to remove the bowl. Reikama added in the whole talking thing, but the whole your siblings will die thing was actually just a bit of flourish she added on, and if Shiori did talk, they wouldn't die. She arranged for that big event at the beginning with the other birds in order to prove to Shiori she was telling the truth. But even though she was definitely lying about that part. Which means Reikama is actually a good guy. Is trying to protect them and the Emperor. She's trying to keep the Emperor ignorant of what's going on for his own safety, and trying to keep the royal, the princes and the princess away from the palace during a time of civil strife, because there's another lord who's raising a civil war against the Emperor, and has hired on an enchanter known as the Wolf. That enchanter is actually planning to free the demons trapped within the sacred mountain. But the only way to do that is to use the natural-born mage of Kiata. See, Kiata was cleansed of magic by the gods, and all the magic users were driven from the land. Magic users are now exiled, if they're found, according to policy. But every once in a while, and all the demons, some of them, the enchanters, magic users who gave up their humanity, and then gave up their humanity even further by giving up their oaths, essentially turned to demons, which are monsters. And they were banished by the gods and dragons to this sacred mountain and bound there. However, the mountain can apparently be opened up and the demons freed by the blood of a natural-born magic user in Kiata. And every once in a while, one is born. And Shiori is the one born to this generation. Every few centuries, one is born, so they've got to keep that going. And apparently the church likes to believe these people are heretics of the gods themselves. They find them, burn them alive with holy fire, and then they keep their ashes so they can perform magic. Because that's not hypocritical at all, right? And it turns out that both the church once wanted her dead, and was willing to use poison to get it. In fact, the dragon actually didn't take this sash, which was a gift from one of the princes, which is believed to have fallen in the pond at the beginning. Reikama found her by the water's edge after the dragon saved her, and she recognized that the sash was poisoned with this sleeping poison that would eventually make her ill. It was an airborne thing that would eventually make her just fall asleep for years and years and years and eventually waste away. Reikama took it and destroyed it. She's actually known about the plot to assassinate her ever since that day, and has been trying to get Shiori out of here away. It was only after Shiori told her siblings that she realized the brothers were now in danger too and had to send them away as cranes. So this whole time, Reikama has been trying to manage, keep everything safe while she dealt with the threat, which was the wolf and the rebel lord, along with the holy people in the church who wanted them to kill Shiori. And one of the reasons I think this is really clever is A, they give you a good chance they give you a clear moment where you can look back on the story and say, I could have figured this out if I had thought this through. And then they have the characters figure it out. And not all of them either. See, there's not like a moment, it's not talking about the moment when they reveal that, oh, your stepmother is protecting you, oh shit, there are a lot of other people who actually want you dead. There's a moment before that, about like halfway through the book, while Shiori's reading this net of magic Starstroke in order to steal back the pearl, which got the Dragon King pissed at her. Because this is like, sacred stuff, you're not supposed to have something that can steal dragon pearls. But they needed it in order to stop the stepmother. And as she's weaving it, Shiori has this thought, it's like, if she wanted us dead, why do all this convoluted bullshit? Why not just kill us? She clearly had the power. Hell, she didn't even need magic for that. She could just have one of her snakes. She could have just put a snake in each of our beds and had it bite us. They are dead. Snake poison, instantly dead. With her magic, she clearly could have deceived the guards and everyone into thinking it was a perfectly natural death. So why bother with this whole turning us into cranes and making me silent thing? And the brother's like, Shiori, she's clearly evil. She's turned us into cranes. Please, we're only available to turn human at night. We can't go anywhere near father. She's clearly controlling him. I know you think there's more to this, but I really think it's just so simple. And the fact that she asked those questions, and you remember, yeah, like, even if she just wanted Shiori, even if you say that Reikama is like a sadistic and wanted Shiori to suffer, why give her that freebie? Why not, like, at the beginning of the book, when Shiori, shouts after her siblings, if those have really been her siblings, and Reikama had actually wanted her to watch her siblings die for talking to her, she could have literally just let that be her siblings and not give her the freebie. And then Shiori could have watched as her own words doomed her siblings and she was forced to wander. That would have given her less resources to work with. There's no reason for her to have done all of this if she just wanted to kill them or take over the kingdom. And it's not. When Shiori goes and eventually starts working in the castle of her fiancé, long story short, she meets the fiancé in this village and he helps give her a bit of money so she can rent a boat. But she thinks it's the brother of her fiancé at first, and she meets the actual person she's supposed to be quote-unquote betrothed to, and he's actually the cousin of that person. They basically swapped names while they were in the village. And the cousin / the one she believes she was betrothed to is a complete dick, and so she feels really justified. She's like, oh, why couldn't I have been betrothed to the cousin? He seems so nice. He has these, beautiful stories. He was willing to give me this money even though I had nothing to give him in return. He was so nice to me. Then she gets to the castle. She gets found by the guards while they're hunting, and she ends up running into what she thinks is her annoying betrothed again. And then they call each other a different name. And it's like, yeah, the actual guy you're betrothed to is off missing somewhere, and this guy's an idiot and calling you a demon, a monster, or ugly and a servant. And it's like, holy shit, he was just going by a different name back then. I don't know why they were doing that, but and so it's more of a twist on the whole why couldn't I have been married to the other guy thing that you see a lot in fiction, where it's like the spoiled betrothed, but it's actually his brother or cousin or whatever that really deserves it, and they reveal to the father that they're just an awful person, and the true love triumphs, and they get a whole new marriage thing. It's like, no. The actual one you were betrothed to, the original guy, wrote you all these letters, and you've just been ignoring them because you didn't want to deal with it. And he's actually been trying to reach out to you and build a connection so that this wouldn't feel like two random people marrying each other don't want to be near each other. He actually was trying to make this work, Shiori. You're the one who didn't put in the effort. And Shiori realizes that and was like, oh shit, I've been a terrible person. He's actually pretty nice, and they get to know each other, which I like. I like the way it happens, where it's like he's been trying to reach out and just like they both got betrothed. It wasn't ideal for either of them, but he was like, well, you know what? I should at least try and send her some letters, and we can get to know each other. And hey, even if we don't love each other, we can still be friends. And then he met her, and she didn't even realize it was him, and they kind of liked each other back then. But she just was so stubborn about the whole thing, she never even considered that she might have, grown to like him. She apparently just never gave him a chance. Apparently he had been sending her letters forever, and she just kept them in a box unopened. And it's just like, yeah, that's kind of a dick move. Like, he didn't ask for this either. You guys could at least, try and have a functional relationship. You're nobles. You don't really get a choice for who you marry. But, yeah, it makes Shiori come across as more human, because she comes across as flawed, but at the same time, she's smart in a lot of other ways. She was very resourceful to survive as she did alone. And, in addition to that, she was very intelligent when it came to the Starstroke and figuring out that Reikama might not actually be evil. No one else was even willing to consider that, but Shiori just literally got finished explaining, seeing how people can be two-faced with the family friend in the noble's house who's treating her like shit while trying to act all nice around everyone else. She's just revealed to herself that she's very biased about people when it comes to her betrothed. And she's starting to have memories about Reikama when she was younger and how nice Reikama was to her. And she starts wondering if Reikama actually hated her. And when it happened. Like, when was the change? Why does she assume all these things? And that's one of the core messages here is that, I guess, the don't judge a book by its cover, or situations can be more complex under the surface. And I kind of like that theme. Like, nothing's really black and white. Although they do have some just complete dicks of characters here. Do not get me wrong. There are some people who are assholes. But you shouldn't judge people by their appearance and whether or not they're assholes. And there's this big fight, and eventually the wolf reveals himself. Afterwards, Shiori nearly gets killed by the priestess. She's saved by her betrothed, and they go off, and they have to go, deal with the wolf, who is now turning into a demon. He drags Shiori to the mountain, and Reikama manages to help guide her out of the mountain. The wolf gets a single drop of blood near the end, so set up some sequel stuff. He's now a demon, and Reikama reveals that she's used up basically all her power, saving Shiori and doing all this and helping to, set up the defeat of the Lord who stood against them. And she's dying, but she's not sad. She's happy she was able to save Shiori, and she reveals. Apparently, there's gonna be another book coming out later this year, where we're gonna get her whole backstory. But she essentially reveals that her sister was born with a dragon's pearl in her heart. And it was pure and beautiful, and she was the object of all desire as a result of it. It was just as much a blessing as a curse. And due to something that happened when she was young, Reikama was cursed with the face of a serpent. She was scorned by her village, and everyone hated her, but she loved her sister most of all, so she tried to protect her sister from the various suitors who had ill intentions for her, but her sister ended up dying. And when she died, the pearl turned dark and fused into Reikama. Reikama was so upset. The pearl granted her a wish of being able to live with others. It basically granted her a human appearance, but in return, it made that appearance the face of her sister. So Reikama has essentially spent her entire rest of her life staring into a mirror at the exact face of the sister she failed to save and still loves to this day. Which is a twisted sort of punishment. Like, granting your greatest wish as to be able to live among moral people after your sister dies, only to have it be the face of the sister you love more than anything else. Like, loved enough to put up with all the shit you got for having a snake face. That's a really twisted Genie's Wish kind of nonsense right there. And then she reveals that she had like nothing left. She didn't even want to live. But then the Emperor came, and he noticed her, and his wife had just died recently, and they bonded over their shared grief. He didn't just choose her because she was pretty, because she had the face of, of her beautiful sister. He chose her because she and him bonded together over the idea that I'm not sure I can ever truly love again, but I still want to be happy. And Reikama was kind of taken by that, and they were good for each other. They helped each other move past their grief. And even though they were never, like, as close as they were with... Reikama was never as close with him as they were with their sister, and he was never as close with her as he was with his first wife, they accepted those boundaries and were able to live with it. It was basically this really sweet idea of, like, a husband remarrying after his wife's death, or an emperor taking on a second wife, where it was just like, they both needed someone to help work through the grief with, and they kind of felt to love each other in their own way as a result of that. And she realized just how much she cared about him, and how scared she was coming to the Imperial Palace with, these 7 kids who weren't hers, and she was worried they wouldn't care about her, they wouldn't love her, and she was worried she wasn't able to love them either. But she grew to care for even the sons, and she ended up loving Shiori. She looked at Shiori like she was her own daughter. And in the end, she actually calls her my daughter, and Shiori calls her mom, which had been a big thing for them when their relationship was first starting out. She was like, I'm not your mother, I can never be your mother. And at the end, she's letting Shiori call her that. And it's just this really sweet moment where she admits what happened to her, and that she's always been trying to look after Shiori, because she knew from the moment she saw Shiori, she saw her own past of magic destroying one's life. In Shiori, and she just wanted to do anything she could to make sure Shiori did not experience that fate. And it was this really sweet moment. I cannot understate this enough. That scene is probably one of the best scenes in this whole book. It made this story for me. It really sent this thing off on a high note. And the grief Shiori went through as she watches Reikama die in her arms. And Reikama's fully accepted her death at this point. She's managed to do the one thing she's always cared about, which was to protect Shiori. She gives the pearl to Shiori as a final gift to say that it's now hers, and she hopes it brings her more fortune than brought Reikama or her sister. And it's just this very sweet moment that I could not help but get taken into. I was very impressed with the writing, and I think Elizabeth Lim deserves all the credit for this book. So, yeah. That's basically all I have to say on this. There are a few other things I could talk about, like the sleeping poison plotline or all that stuff, but in general, I think that's about it. So, yeah. Anyway, for the announcements. Obviously, I'm working on reviewing The Dragon's Promise. I've still got to finish it, but yeah, I'm reading that right now. It's going well so far. I'm also about finished with Shadow and Bone Season 2, so I'll work to get that review out in the next few days so I can catch up on my reviews I missed, since I was busy this last week. In addition, we have a lot of movies coming up. We have John Wick 4, we have Shazam, Scream 6, and that new Dungeons & Dragons movie, plus the new Mario movie is about to come out. All of those are on the docket. We'll have to see what I get to first. I know I'm definitely going to try and see John Wick and the Dungeons & Dragons movie within the next 2 weeks. I have like so much on my plate right now. I'm still playing through Hi-Fi Rush. I took a break from that this past week. But we are going to be starting up that playthrough again. I'm going to be streaming it at 7:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. However, this Thursday I may stream it at 6:30 so I can go to the Dungeons & Dragons premiere that night. So be on the lookout for all that. Also, if you have not noticed, there is this new cool little piece of artwork for our channel. A friend of mine, he goes by the name Gillard on a few different places, made it. He made it completely just for fun. And I'm so grateful for it. I think it's really cute. It has me as a dragon reading to him, one of his like icon characters he uses on his Discord. So give him a thanks for that if you like the image. He does a great job, and I'm very happy to have this. I got a piece of fan art. It's adorable. So yeah, let's move on to the in card scene. Okay, everybody, we got the in card here. So we have the subscribe orb. Join the subscribe orb. Go and subscribe. And then we have a video YouTube recommends and a playlist for all the stuff for this year. Check it out, and I will see you guys next time.